Hello there, truth and liberty lovers. This is Dawn.
And I'm Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty, and happy Mother's Day. Because it's Mother's Day, we kind of like to take a look at liberty in the context of a holistic lifestyle. A holistic lifestyle includes every area of life, and liberty does impact every area of our lives. It impacts how we look at our health and how we seek health care. It impacts how we relate to people. Naturally, it impacts our relationship with government and our beliefs about government. And it's a all-encompassing way to look at life. What would you say? What's your point of view on all this?
I think that there's ways that God wants us to live, and that we're free when we live within those parameters. It sounds conflicting, it sounds restrictive, and it's easily misunderstood. A lot of times when you talk about God, people think religion, and so they come into religious bondage trying to get free. That's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about a God who loves us and created us to be free, and whenever man sets up a structure like religion, like government, like so many other things, including relationships, there's opportunities for fulfillment and opportunities for bondage. You know, you can become slaves to relationships by doing whatever that other person wants you to do instead of being true to yourself. So there's traps and there's opportunities in everything.
When things fit together, when there's a flow, you'll be happier. Your life will be richer. You'll be more in agreement with I hate to use this word. But
what if I'm
good.
A person that gets off on controlling other people? I will be less fulfilled. You'll make me less fulfilled.
You're one of the people who's going to have to go into the underground city and play Risk with weapons for the rest of your life. Okay.
Oh boy! Oh boy!
Yeah, only a masochist could be happy with that, but who knows? Shortly after we completed our video last week, we learned, along with everybody else, that Osama Bin Laden had been captured, and we had some serious questions about that, which Don will address.
One of the most important things to keep in mind here is that liberty-minded, truth activist people can spend a lot of fruitless time debating the minutia of how he was caught, who knew about it, why the stories changed. I do want to point out that the stories did change. There's no good reason for the stories changing. You can't blame a false version on this or that. The version that we ended up with, that Osama bin Laden was unarmed and he was killed by a Navy SEAL team, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because why wouldn't they capture him, interrogate him, gain a lot of information from him? So there's that obvious question. Why was the body dumped? Well, you can come up with possible reasons for all this stuff, so it's not really worth debating. Personally, I did know through various internet sources that I trust, one of which was a YouTube video of Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto not long before she was assassinated, in which she says that Osama bin Laden is dead. This is, and it was, according to a guest on Alex Jones that we'll discuss in a minute, something that was widely known in the intelligence communities of the Western world, that it was that he died in December of 2001. Regardless of all of this, the key point to keep in mind is that this hype is being used, not quite obvious yet, but it is definitely being used to tighten the screws on freedom and liberty in America. Even this morning I read a news story of some Muslim scholars that teach in the United States in universities that were refused to go on a plane, even though they passed security because the pilot didn't trust them. And this Muslim scholar was quoted as saying, "We are losing our freedoms." This is an American. This is wrong, folks. This is not constitutional, and this is the rapid progression into a police state. Homeland Security has plans to do the kind of searches that are happening in the airports, in shopping malls, at sports events, and on highways. They need an excuse to do this, and that's what this event is being used for down the line. Watch and see. Be aware. Be watchful. Because that's the bottom line of what's happening.
This week, the real Jack Ryan was a guest on the Alex Jones show. And he was discussing Black Ops and his experiences with Black Ops over the years. Don, would you elaborate on that?
Dr. Steve Pachesnik was Alex Jones' guest several times this week. I think a total of 3 times, although Alex was only there for, I think, 2 of them, maybe just 1 of them, and Steve Watson, or maybe it was Aaron Dykes, interviewed him the other 2 times. So, mind-blowing revelations. If you want, and I encourage everybody who hasn't seen well, it's on YouTube, but you don't have visual of him, you only have audio. Nobody knows what this man looks like. He was, and it is on record, that Tom Clancy's novels, using the character Jack Ryan, was patterned after Dr. Pachesnik. This is the man who has written the book on Black Ops and psych warfare. He has done regime change in countries, various parts of the world, over 3 decades and under, I believe it is, 5 different presidents. He is, I cannot listen to this man without hearing Harrison Ford in that scene in, I can't remember the name of which movie it is, but where he says, "How dare you, Mr. President?" This is the kind of authority this man has, and he is openly saying, one of the questions to Dr. Pachesnik was, aren't you afraid for your life, coming on with this information saying that you had a conversation with a certain general who admitted to you that 9/11, going back to that now, that 9/11 was a Black Ops false flag stand down event, and he's willing to testify to that. He actually came on Alex Jones sometime in the past and didn't offer that information about the general, but he knows that 9/11 is an inside job. How is it that this man is not afraid for his life, coming out and saying such things? Paul Craig Roberts, the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, also interviewed on the show after him, had that question. And the answer is that Dr. Pachesnik didn't spell it out, but very strongly, what he said was, we have a mutually assured destruction. And what he's saying by that is that, this is my interpretation now, but this is the way that it makes sense to me, how that works. This is a man in Black Ops. There are other people in Black Ops that carry out these, what we would call anti-American, unconstitutional, illegal events. There are 2 communities in Black Ops, and he's basically saying, you can't kill me without my guys, the guys that are loyal to me, knowing what you did, and you will pay for it dearly. So the implication is pretty obvious. He's talking directly to President Obama and saying, stop this deception now. Dr. Pachesnik had come on Alex Jones only once before, 10 years ago, to reveal in 2001, or maybe it was 2002, that Osama Bin Laden had died, that he was on ice, and literally, and that his body would be ruled out at a later time when it was needed for a political event. They almost did that, most likely, for the 2004 election to give George W. Bush a boost, but there was so much exposure of that possibility that they didn't do it. They've saved that until now, counting on enough people not being awake and able to understand what's really going on. So there is this tremendous mind game going on where people are celebrating, believing that this great thing happened, but are being suckered into this opportunity to roll out increased tyranny, because even now the retribution and the revenge of the Muslims is being hyped. Well, why are we doing this in Pakistan? Why are we blaming Pakistan? Pakistan is being set up for the fall guy for harboring this. Why do we want to have what looks like is going to happen next, an invasion of Pakistan? That is something that has long been on the grand chessboard, as Zbigniew Brzezinski calls it, an area of the world that's they want to control to be able to control the flow of oil and into and out of China. I don't understand the details of it. I just know that it is an extremely strategic area in terms of the developing economies in that region. I want to give you the source on the best information to go for more detail. There is a man named Webster Tarpley. I don't think I've mentioned him before. He's been a frequent guest on Alex Jones, but also has his own radio program. And he's very knowledgeable in world events. His show is called, on the GCN network, is called Global Crisis Radio. Excellent source of more information on why this would be happening behind the scenes in Pakistan. So that's all I really want to do in terms of saying what's going on with the Osama Bin Laden death. There's one more thing that I do want to mention, that as often happens when we have extensive media hype, there's usually something happening in the background. While the magician is creating this distraction over here, something is going on here which they don't want you to see. Create a fake event over here and do something very important over here. One of the things that happened that didn't get the media attention this week is Libya and Gaddafi removing access of the rebels to all of their oil fields. So this is really about, as we had mentioned previously, the Anglo-American banking establishment wanting to control the economy, the oil in Libya, and Gaddafi was too nationalistic, too much oriented around doing what's right for his people and not being a good little globalist yes man. So they're taking him out, but it's not going well for them because Gaddafi has been successful in breaking off the rebels' control of the oil resources in Libya. So what we have is a situation where the ground forces are almost certainly going to be entering into that region in another war. It's something to really keep an eye on, and as much as possible, we want to say no to that. I think Americans are really not buying into this one. The fact that it was exposed in the mainstream media that Al-Qaeda is behind the rebels in Libya is really causing Americans to wake up, and that's a great thing. So be aware of that, keep the pressure on. They want you to be diverted away from recognizing what's really happening in Libya, but we shouldn't be.
And we broke our long fast from television news and watched the presidential debates on Fox this week. Most of the candidates appeared to be men who love liberty. One in particular is closely affiliated, however, with the banking system. Herman Caine talked a lot about being a candidate who was not from government, who was from the private sector. However, Herman Caine used to be a Federal Reserve Board member. And I know that Don has some things to say about the presidential debates.
Okay. Yes, Herman Caine was a member of the Kansas City, I believe, or Kansas Federal Reserve Board. So That's his background. He doesn't want to audit the Fed. He believes that's a waste of time. It's more than obvious to somebody who's studied what's really going on that this is a man who is fronting for the establishment, claiming to be pro-business, the CEO of Godfather's Pizza, claiming to be this great entrepreneur when in fact he's being propped up by the establishment banking system. One of the things that was notable about the debate was that you didn't have what would normally be considered the top tier of contenders there, except for Ron Paul, who people aren't sure quite what to make of him. Mitt Romney wasn't there. Sarah Palin wasn't there.
Donald Trump?
Well, Donald Trump, he doesn't really come close to declaring, but the Newt Gingrich, none of those normally considered the top front runners weren't there. So why is that? One possible scenario that could be happening here is that the establishment wants to flood the field with a bunch of people so that Ron Paul gets lost in the mix, and then they want to create another tier of the big name people, which would include Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, etc., and make that the main show and let this debate among the lesser people be something that doesn't get as much media attention. So they want to marginalize or try to marginalize Ron Paul's impact that way.
This week, I had the misfortune of attending a liberty-minded meeting without Don, and the discussion was rather interesting and ran to the gold standard. And I, without Don there, was on my own trying to explain why a gold standard is not the salvation of our financial system. So Don, would you talk a little bit about that and about what's been happening in precious metals markets this week?
There's a lot going on. You may have noticed, if you watch commodities at all, that silver had a huge plunge this past week, almost 30%. So what's going on here? But I want to step back before I get into that and say a little bit about the type of thing that Cindy experienced is as it relates to the Federal Reserve, the monetary system, etc. There's a huge movement now, and it's great that people are saying, let's end the Federal Reserve. Then the question is obvious. What next? What do we replace it to? What do we replace it with? And the general consensus at this point is it's got to be something like a gold standard. Fiat money is bad, bad, bad. All of our problems are because of this fiat money, that they can create money out of nothing. And then we owe them interest on the money they create out of nothing. That is all true, but consider this. This is the first layer type of thing Cindy was just talking about. These people that set up the Federal Reserve System knew at the time they were setting it up that it was fraud. They knew that it would be discovered that it was fraud at some point. Hey, it's been 100 years. Hey, the charter expires. Do you think they might have planned that we would figure out the scam as they raped us as the last vestige of power that they could, to grab all of the goodies that they could with that banker bailout and the TARP and quantitative easing 1 and 2, all of that pillaging and plundering? Do you think they might have anticipated a reaction that we would say, oh, bad fiat money? Yeah, that's what they planned. Yeah, that's what they want you to say. Oh, let's have a gold standard, something that's worth something. Well, guess who's been quietly hoarding, acquiring all of the gold? Now, this doesn't make sense unless you understand that there are 13 or so families and associates at the top of this international financial pyramid. Once you know that, I've done that research, it's not hard to see that these people are so incredibly wealthy that they really have vast resources at their disposal to do this massive con game. It blows people away to think that there could be a century-long con in process. I'm convinced that that is what is going on. So they want you to want a gold standard because as soon as the people agree to that, they will be able to buy up all the land. We will be serfs, wake up homeless on the continent our forefathers conquered, as Thomas Jefferson said, and they win. New serfdom. We have to learn how to be smarter than this. We have to learn how to not jump immediately and say, ooh, bad, fiat money. We need something tangible. Well, as soon as you make a commodity the basis of your currency, you've taken that commodity out of the realm of being just a commodity that's useful for whatever you can do with it, and you've put it into the category of something that people want to hoard and speculate on. And those with whatever resources you have in the previous system are going to do that as soon as they think that's the direction things are going. So let's be smarter than that. Let's look into the idea of a fiat system, but one that's controlled by the people. If the greatest enemy to these global controlling, manipulating con men is a public control of a fiat currency. So please do some research on that. Watch The Money Masters, watch The Secret of Oz, read Ellen Brown's Web of Debt, look into many different tools out there that'll help you understand this. And I realize that I'm breaking ranks with the Ron Paul and Dr. Edwin Vieira gold standard camp, because I really do see that there is a trap here. So I want to encourage you to look into that. Now, about silver. What's going on with silver now, in this huge 30%-ish drop that's happened this past week, is something very similar to what happened with the Hunt brothers in Texas in around about 1980, late 79, early 1980s. They were attempting to, as some people said, corner the market on silver. All that Bunker Hunt was really trying to do was, he saw with the nation going off of the gold standard, when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1970, the vestige of the gold standard, that he wanted to have some kind of a hedge to protect him from inflation. And for him, the answer was silver. So they began to acquire vast amounts of silver. Well, the world brokerage houses did not like that, because the value of silver was becoming more and more. The value of their currencies were becoming less and less. The game was getting out of their control, or at least the potential for the game getting out of their control was there. So they began to limit the amount of silver that could be acquired. You could sell as much as you wanted, but you could only buy certain smaller amounts. That they were trying to stop him at his game. And ultimately they were able to do so, because they were in power, and he wasn't able to do, in a rigged market, he wasn't able to do what in a free market you should be able to. There's a different thing happening now, in that we have a huge number of people that are acquiring silver at whatever scale they can. We're doing that on a very small scale, but other people are doing it on a bigger scale, and the key thing is that it's en masse. It's a huge number of people, so that the public is now seeing, the public that's aware of the value of silver as compared to public currency, is growing in numbers, and is also growing in wisdom, and realizing that this big drop is just a sale on the price of silver. Hey, now's the time to buy. People are not convinced that silver has suddenly lost its value and the bubble has burst. I don't think anybody's buying that for a minute. So you have a breakdown in the controller's ability to manipulate the market. It just isn't going to work. They have tried this artificial suppression via manipulation of the futures market, being closing of their short positions, etc., to drive it down as quickly and as rapidly as they can, forcefully as they can, to try to convince people that they don't want to do this. But we're encouraging you not to fall for that. So we see a long-term strategy in acquiring silver, in spite of what I have said about the fiat currency being the best way to go. We're not saying that ultimately silver is the thing we want to base our currency on. I think it's probably an intermediary stage necessary for educating people about what real money is, and that ultimately we will see that even a commodity based such as silver is not the way to go. But we're talking probably a decade or more down the road before that realization kicks in. I'm just trying to give you the bigger picture that I see.
If part of the problem here, part of what's happening is a lot of people don't understand what a short position is. A short position means that you profit when the price goes down. And holding a lot of short positions is actually a lot of short positions is a way to keep a price, a value of a commodity low. The people who are trying to manipulate the economy hold a lot of short positions on silver. So they want the price of silver to remain low. If it doesn't, they stand to lose a lot of money. And a few months ago, somebody was saying that if every American bought an ounce of silver, it would ruin the bankers who are trying to manipulate the economy, because they'd be forced to close their short positions when the price was rising, and they would lose a lot of money. So at this point, it looks as if people who are holding short positions want to drive down the price of silver so they can close their short positions. If and when that happens, the price will jump. And we've seen this, if you look at silver charts, you'll see a couple of times where the chart just shoots up in price. And that happens when somebody who holds a lot of short positions closes their short positions. So hopefully that you can understand a little bit of that. Actually, we wrote a book several years ago about investing, and you can read about shorts. It's a free PDF online, and we'll have the web address on the screen. There's a chapter there about short positions if you'd like to understand that a little better. Another thing, Don, that people asked me about at the meeting that I attended without you was when I said that we would benefit more if we had a currency that wasn't bound to a gold standard. And some of the people there said to me that the Constitution requires that we be on a gold standard. I had never heard that before, but is that true? And can you elaborate a little on that?
It's actually more or less true. There's some of a gray area. It's not spelled out that the federal government needs to have gold and silver be the currency. It does talk about a dollar, which was a Spanish unit that was or I'm not even sure. Let's cut that out if it mentions the dollar. But at the time of the Constitution was written, probably the most stable currency that the founders were hoping to be able to use for trade was the Spanish dollar. And they did require that states, the states which were the sovereign unit, and constitutionally still are the sovereign unit in the Republic of the United States, required that the states pay any loans to the federal government in gold and silver, which at that time was denominated in dollars. The reason being that if the federal government needed to take out a loan, needed to borrow money, obviously from the European banking establishment in that day, they would need to do so in a currency that at that time was backed by gold and silver. So it's kind of only by implication. And in my opinion, this was simply a strategy of the day to enable the new republic to be able to trade in the world that they wanted to trade in. So it's not something that I see as being ultimately written in stone. Yes, it is something that is in the Constitution. There are issues with that should be addressed for today, because if you think about it, again, this goes back to the idea of the long con, 100-year plus con that I was talking about, where you had us changing away from a gold standard, America changing away from a gold standard and to a fiat currency that was not on gold ultimately after Nixon in 1970. So you have the opportunity for people to, the banking establishment, to acquire gold using that fiat currency that they've created. The Federal Reserve is just an arm of the European banking establishment. So again, let's not fall into the trap of thinking we've got to go back on the gold standard because that's what the Constitution says. We need to look at that issue in this day for today. We're in a constitutional crisis in more ways than one. I highly, highly value the Constitution, but I don't think returning to the letter of the law of the Constitution is the answer for today. We have to look behind that. We have to address the issues behind that and not pretend like we're living in 1776 or 1775. We're in a parallel situation, but there's certain things that are different. So let's not just say we've got to have gold because that's what the Constitution says. Let's look at the issues. We've got a constitutional crisis anyway for many reasons. Let's begin to think about these issues and address them as a whole and go beyond the letter of the law.
So this is not a simple issue. This is not something that you can hear one speech and understand. It requires some research. So if you're serious about helping to make the United States, making the world a better place to live, learn about these things, do some research, watch the films that Don mentioned. That's a great place to start. And have an open mind. That's, one of the most important things that any of us can possess is the ability to look at something objectively, be detached enough to evaluate it, and not see our identity tied to whether we have been right about something. If our identity is tied to whether or not we've been right, how can we ever change? It's important in life to be able to change and to flow. And this week, Don and I had the pleasure and privilege of meeting a gentleman who was one of the developers of uses of Brown's gas, which essentially is burning water. And it was a very interesting meeting. This gentleman also has opinions about other ways to conserve and about the idea that there really is no lack.
The reason we did this was we want to increase visibility and credibility. This is something that we believe is real, that there is real science behind what Knudsen is saying, his background, and it's legit, but it's been very, very much marginalized or hidden or covered, this knowledge, but it is continuing to spread. And you have a whole plethora of people doing things like hydrogen in the gasoline that is loosely based off of this technology, but don't quite understand the core of it. And that's what Newt does understand and wants to get this information out there before he passes on. So, and this is a person that believes in sharing knowledge openly. So we want to be a conduit through which this understanding can flow.
And this week we have a segment with our friend Dr. Noah. We met with him yesterday and we opened the segment by talking about how he's able to help people overcome allergy and sinus problems. I have not been feeling well this week, and if you follow our website at all, you are aware that I did not write very many blogs this week. I was just kind of behind the 8 ball. And after a visit to Dr. Noah on Thursday, I have been feeling great, and we'll hear from him how he managed that. Well, hello. We are here with Dr. Noah today.
What a treat. It's always, I actually look forward to Saturdays now to
So do
you
we.
Weekly get together.
It's kind of get together. And yeah, thank you again for allowing me to be on your show. That's kind of great.
It's our pleasure and our honor.
Yeah.
And I had an experience that I wanted to share.
Nice.
Don and I have been seeing Dr. Noah for some time and have had marked improvement in our health in various aspects. But last week I just kind of had a general malaise, wasn't feeling great, had a headache on and off for about 3 days, but you know how you just kind of keep going and don't think about it much. But on my regular visit to Dr. Noah, I mentioned to him that I had a headache, and he gave me a few magical treatments. No, it's not magic, it's science. And
But it seems like magic because
it does.
a lot of people go even to see their drug doctor. A lot of their type very powerful and toxic drugs do work, but it usually takes some time. My profession, I was just talking with my colleague over there, I mean, we are really blessed, and it's unfortunate we only see 8% of the population, is that we get results a lot of times, as you experienced, within a very short amount of time. But go ahead, tell your story.
Yeah, I left with my headache somewhat improved. Had to run some errands on the way home. When I got home, I just really still felt pretty wiped out. So I lay down and took about a 20-minute nap, woke up, all the malaise was gone. I felt great. And the next morning when I woke up, I just really realized how poor I had been feeling all week. Because waking up in the morning, I felt normal, and it was amazing.
And we've talked about
like
this whole concept of health. I mean, I've actually had debates with my patients is that they insist that they're healthy even though they're overweight, 12 medications, but because they're not in the hospital, they're healthy. And this whole, people have never, a lot of times, ever experienced true health because even when they're not in the hospital and they don't have, quote, ailments, they have sometimes what are called subclinical type of findings. So we see that a lot with thyroid conditions, with allergies, immune function, bugs in your system like that. It's not enough to really cause your body to, maybe seek a health professional, but you just never feel great.
Yeah.
And that sometimes can go on 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And so it's kind of shocking to people when they come in here, I start working on them, and for the first time in their lives, I mean, oh my God, I'll just do a little questionnaire like, how often do you have a headache? Every day. Well, that's wrong. I thought everybody has headaches. I asked them about how's their energy level from 0 to 100. Oh, it's 70%. Well, where I went to school, that's a C. I mean, what's wrong with 100? And it's not even in their consciousness that they could actually get to a level where they have no headaches, they have lots of energy, and they feel great every day.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
So what was the cause of what happened with you, and how did he know how to treat it?
Well, he asked me to judge my headache on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as pain, and I think I said 4. And he asked me a couple other questions. And
yeah, I kind of assessed it was this right now. We live in Northern California, which is one of the worst areas for allergies, and it's a common thing. You don't have to always have the classic, irritated eyes, stuffy postnasal drip. Allergies, and as I told Cindy and I tell my patients, just go out to your car and run your finger over your car. You see this big junk that's in there. Well, that's going around. These are foreign proteins. These are foreign substances, and your body has to work hard to try to deal with it. So what I do is I give your body a little extra type of little cleansing, and actually helps try to help enhance the body to get rid of this, so you don't have this load.
And I had just been in last week, a week ago
Right,
today. Right. And the day before, I had experienced this heavy allergy overload that I recognized. I knew what's going on with me. I said, hey, can you do anything? And you did, and I was 80% better the next day and 100% better the couple days after that. So.
And I was telling,
bravo to you.
Thank you. I was talking to Cindy. I mean, it's like your car. Your car can once again be not properly tuned up, even though the car is now blowing out black smoke and kind of shaky and stuff. gas mileage goes down. If you get it smogged, you find out that these waste products are higher. Same as with the body. And so you need to, once again, go to a health provider that understands health. Unfortunately, most drug doctors have never seen health. Once again, they feel happy as long as they get you on your drugs that their job is done. And even though you walk around like a drugged out zombie, that's supposed to make them a happy day. I'm talking about optimum health, where you feel that you're best like that. So yeah, so that's what's kind of nice. That as we talked a little bit before, is the struggle to overcome people's mind. Both Don and Cindy, and just through another patient of mine, knows this individual that has some really revolutionary type of inventions and ways to deal with energy. But when it comes to his health, he is so narrow-minded, and once again, he's a slave to the old notion, thinking that nothing can help this, and that's just nothing could be farther from the truth.
So liberty is holistic.
It is holistic, exactly right. So even though you might be really good in alternative energy or zero energy and type of living off the grid, health-wise, you have to also break out like that.
Absolutely.
And of course, the spiritual and political and social type of things also have to be incorporated. You just can't be really good and say, politically you're really good. Or we were talking about finances between the issues of a gold standard versus where we are now. I mean, that we kind of laugh at it, but most people think that's the answer. Just
Cindy was talking about layers and how there's different layers of truth that'll help release you into greater freedom.
Right.
But don't just stop with one layer.
No,
keep going.
That's right.
And health is definitely affecting even more than one layer.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And a little good news from Don. Don kind of came in here, and I can guarantee you, like eye to eye, go to your drug doctor for what I'm doing for Don. They'd say that's an impossibility. It's actually helping with your hearing. And you would share with me, your actual hearing is starting to get a little bit better.
There's background noises that in his office that I'm sure were the same before that I never heard before that I'm hearing now.
And Cindy, you also recommend that in the morning when Don doesn't have his hearing aids, and hope I'm not violating any HIPAA laws here by sharing your health story here, so it's okay.
No.
I'm only joking. Is that Cindy noticed that Don seems to be a little bit more receptive with just hearing without his hearing aids like that. I can guarantee you go to Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and they look Don right in the eye and say, there's nothing that can be done for that. It's impossible. It's impossible. And it happens all the time.
Well, it really does. Until you experience it, it's hard to believe, but it's true.
And it's not that, that's what's so sad, is that it's not something like, I've created. I just go through the scientific literature. I actually go through the drug doctors' journals, and these doctors say, yeah, this is possible. I just incorporate it in my practice. The sad thing is the drug doctors don't even read their own science saying, yes, this is now possible to fix your brain and help with Alzheimer's. It's not something, or deafness in the ear due to neurological problem like that. I mean, it's just...
What we were saying before was, for some reason, a lot of people want to believe the lie. It's if you know that something is possible, that means you're going to push for it. That takes some energy, moral, spiritual, physical. It takes energy. It means there's something that's required of you, exerting your own personal responsibility. If somebody says, no, that's not possible, hey, guess what? You get to give up. You get to lay down and accept these consequences.
Well, now you're a victim, and now it's like it's not my fault. My drug doctor said, it's in my genes. We've already talked about the New England Journal of Medicine article, the most prestigious medical journal in the world, 2000, that actually put that to rest. They looked at 90,000 identical twins, which have exactly the same genes, and genes only constitute either health or sickness, only 10% or less. So that BS doesn't go anywhere. But almost every week I hear from someone coming and saying, okay, here, just take this drug, Mrs. Jones, because your mother and father had this. There's nothing you do. You have to be on the drug. So it's an enslavement. Basically make you a slave. Also, you become a victim and a little baby, and you can't think outside that, saying, well, gee, I listen to Dr. Noah, and statin drugs don't work. That mammography doesn't work. But, that's what the thing, we'll talk a little bit here.
Where lies are more pervasive than truth. That you've got to take...
Well, World War II, the Nazis did a great job, and they actually stated that if you tell a lie, a big lie, often enough, people believe it. That's exactly it. And that's unfortunately, that's the same state like that. And with one person dying every 3 minutes because of medical procedures, it is very costly. So I thought I'd go a little bit over the medical review. So in this study here in the Journal of Pediatrics in May 2011, oh, that's right, that's this month. Go in and I always ask my patients, go in and quiz your drug doctor. A lot of times they won't know about this for another 10 years. Is that, with breastfeeding is really the best type of way. I mean, we've talked about that on my TV show. I've lectured at different places. The Leachy League, other people have really proponent, but there's still this kind of notion that to be a 21st century mom, formula is the best thing to do. I mean, it's just so far to be true, true like that. It's garbage. This is just another study that those babies and infants who are breastfed for 18 months or longer increase their chances of obesity, which is an epidemic. The next one was here in California. Here, our governor is Jerry Brown, and we won't talk about politics. But he was supposed to give a big talk on taking off a skin cancer. He had basal cell cancer, and that's the other kind of big scam out there. I mean, it costs lots of money. I mean, the good news is basal cell and squamous cells is 100% curable, but once again, it costs thousands of dollars. Here's the governor having to prevent going lecturing. What I used is, once again, just going through a little article called Cancer Letters, which is a medical journal back in 1991. They kind of started just, once again, be a little thinking. Now, in Australia, there's the Native Americans there are called the Aborigines, and they've been around for about 40,000 years. And they run around naked all the time in Australia. And how come they don't have all kind of skin cancer and stuff?
How come indeed?
Oh,
wasn't
man,
that before the Freon destroyed the ozone layer?
I think it was.
Another nice fable.
Exactly, another fable. So what they found out is, and they've seen this not only with skin cancer, but other things like in Japan, a number that has changed is they smoke like fiends, but their lung cancer is almost like 1/10 as much.
And maybe their tobacco's not as treated either. I don't know.
Well, that's one factor like that. But once again, they eat healthy foods. They eat seaweeds and stuff. And not saying that you should have smoking. And like I said, that they've been shown now that the tobacco industry have additives that are carcinogenic added to the tobacco plant. Also, they've added different type of things that make it more addictive. But we won't go into that. But they found out is that these Aborigines, when they started getting these little type of things on their body, they would dig up this little tuber like a potato and kind of crush it up and then put it on there, and it would go away.
That's awesome.
So they've actually, it's what's called a glycoside. It's a natural compound. And in this study, it showed that basal cell and squamous cell and keratosis, complete remission. What's that number there, Don?
That is 100%.
100%, not 90%, not 85%, 100%.
Wow.
And they only studied this up to 3
Those are
years
different
after.
types of cells too. That it was
Basal cell, squamous cell, and keratosis, which are, once again, one's precancerous, one are skin cancer. This is not melanoma. That's a different story like that.
Glycoalkaloid cream.
That's right.
Okay.
Wow.
So a guy wrote a book about it, and I use it myself, being a surfer and stuff. And here it is. Here's something over the counter. Doesn't cost you $3,000 or $4,000. And that's also the other problem. I mean, people don't see the cost because everything is hidden. Mm-hmm. So they go to the drug doctor and everything is, quote, covered. So they go in for the procedures that cost tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, totally worthless, but they don't pay anything.
Leave them scarred.
Of course, exactly. No scarring. You apply this topically. You do it in the comfort of your home, and it works great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but that's once again. Well, the interesting story is, so this guy here, had doing this, and he dare start talking about the science. Mm-hmm. Well, the FDA put the big thumb on him.
What?
It said, you cannot, you have to take that product off the market. You can't make claims, even though you got science. That's right. Because the FDA, once again, works for the drug companies. They don't want, once again, go see Dr. Noah and for $50, $60, you go home and do this for yourself for 3 months. No, you got to go see your drug doctor, and once again, for thousands of dollars, burn it off, cut it out, and all these type of things. Like I said, even the governor of California went in and couldn't even go to, hey, I could do anything I want. You put this on and go out, and I'm going to go to,
That's fabulous.
Go to Napa a little bit later on. So yeah, so that's the sadness. That's, once again, is the kind of monopoly that's out there now, not allowing even good science to show. Once again, it didn't show that it would have 50% success rate, which a lot of drugs, I mean, if they make 50%, it's like a major breakthrough. 100%. And they publish.
And no side effects.
No side effects, no scarring.
What did they do to him? How did they shut him down?
Oh, they just brought him to court, and the court said, hey, you have to do this or we throw you in jail.
Oh.
Oh, that's right. We don't live in a free country. That's right.
Oops.
Oops.
Are you awake now?
I know. So anyway, so that's one of my favorites because I have people coming in. Now, even if it doesn't scar, you see these people, they have these big, because what they usually use liquid nitrogen. It's real cold, it kills it, and it does do the job. But once again, for like a month or two, you got this big sore that's on like that. Sometimes you do get scarring, sometimes you get depigmentation. When they do that, now you have a white spot there, which is not fun. So there's that. Virginia did for the whole state what's called Drug Take Back Day, and they were able to bring back 10,000 pounds of drugs that weren't being used. Now, not only do drugs most of the time don't work and are toxic to you, when you either flush them down the toilet, they're actually considered toxic waste. And so they're trying to actually tell people, hey, don't flush it down the toilet, don't throw it out in your garbage, because again, that crap is going to go out there and hurt the fishies and the bunny rabbits and stuff like that. Of course, it does that to you, and as we've talked about many times, most of these things don't even work. We've talked about how like statin drugs are a joke. Once again, about $40 billion. So I mean, that's kind of crazy. We told they're recommending that people actually cook their cold cuts. Now, an earlier study just within the last month shows that 50% of all your meat is contaminated with bacteria that's resistant to antibiotics, because they've been feeding these animals. 70% of all antibiotics are fed to these sick animals that you slaughter and then eat like that. And now cold cuts are a problem, so you need to be doing that.
Whoa.
Kind of an interesting story. This story I didn't think was that controversial, but once again, who reads the science? A number of years ago, they found out, okay, salt has a good side and a bad side. Salt, can help, give some different flavoring, and helps, of course, been used as a preservative like that. But there's a concern that that can increase blood pressure, and they found out with this big study published in New England Journal of Medicine again, showing that there's about 25 or 30% people that are really sensitive to the salt, and they probably shouldn't be. Other people, don't oversalt things. I mean, if you got fresh food, I mean, that's another type of thing. It should taste pretty good. Well, a new study came out which is causing a lot of controversy from the Journal of American Medical Association in May 2011. This Belgium study showing that actually people on low salt actually had a higher incidence of heart attacks and strokes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So once again, is you have to always go back to everybody's an individual. Cindy and I were talking about, and once again, not to reveal too much, she had some circulatory problems, and I gave her something that I've had good success with other patients from Spain. So instead of having injections for spider veins or varicose veins, there's a natural product that, once again, works most of the time. Cindy didn't work with, but now she's on Protandim, which is another type of thing that helps with circulation, antioxidant stress, antioxidant. That's really benefiting it. So, but everybody's different. So try to put everybody in a box and saying that, everybody shouldn't do salt or too much salt. Now, once again, I don't think you should go crazy and overboard with salt, but,
One of the things about salt is that we're close with the so-called modern growing techniques, we're really mineral deprived. And
That's
if you use a salt that is a sea salt that has all kinds of trace minerals, that's a really important
You're getting
aspect of it. It's not just sodium chloride.
That's right. Well, but if you buy just regular type, Morton's type like that, that's
so
just
there's
sodium chloride. There's
salt.
different qualities like that, same type of thing, and how they process it and stuff. Another study, which wasn't a study, was an FDA. FDA just approved another company for a carotid stent. Now, these stents we've talked about before, not only with the heart, with the carotid, which is up and through here. It's a Band-Aid for a serious problem. Now, once again, costing tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's kind of crazy. Studies have shown that within 3 to 4 months, 40% of the stents in the heart and other places like that restenosis or kind of decrease down. Well, I guess that's a good deal. I mean, if that cost, if you made $100,000 and in 3 or 4 months, 40% of your customers are going to come back again, you make a lot of money. But we don't have the money again.
You're in the wrong business.
I am. I fix people.
You could be out there getting rich.
I know. Instead of actually causing problems and more problems. We already talked about that study from Dr. Garson. He's only an MD, MPH, a Master of Public Health. Former dean of Virginia Medical School. Don't get more conservative than this guy. Now he's vice president. He says that the medical profession, in terms of ripping people off, is over $1 trillion. I mean, that's per year, and that's crazy. So all these kind of little gags like that. Great, Mary Jane. Come on in. We'll do this procedure for $30, $40, $150,000, and then once again, don't make any changes. Eat crap. Don't exercise. It's okay. Medicare pays for it. Oh, that's right. we pay for that. That's tax dollars.
right.
Or our insurance pays for it. Well, that's why premiums keep going up 39%, because they're not a charitable organization. If the medical, and that's part of the scam here, because people say, well, Dr. No, I mean, you would think the insurance company would be sending people to you and other people. No, the scam is that when the three of us were growing up, how many people had insurance when you grew up? 0. How many do you have?
We had it, my parents had it for emergency room visits.
Okay.
Which is kind of the flip of how
Right,
it is now.
Now it's like, oh, I got a little splinter, I better go to the ER room for $18,000 to get that out. Because I don't pay for it. So that's the issue. If you went and had a problem and it only cost you $100, you wouldn't spend $1,000 to $2,000 a month for something that's so cheap. But now things have gotten so expensive. I've had a patient go in with a sliver. Once again, he had insurance. Cost $1,800 to go like that. That's what makes people, once again, want to have insurance, because if something happens, they know it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. On my TV show, NapaValleyTV.org, little plug there, Channel 28, 21st Century Natural Health. The TV producer there went over. He was in a rock and roll band, kind of fell off and broke his leg. In Germany, it cost for 7 days in jail, during the surgery, everything like that, a little less than $8,000. What's that?
In jail.
Did I say jail?
Jail.
It is like jail. Hospital. His sister, who had a little different, another type of break like that, cost her $40,000 for 4 hours here.
Wow.
So that's, once again, that's the scam that people keep saying, because people are afraid. If they have a simple thing as like breaking your bone, they're at $7,000. You think, well, I don't have to go to the hospital, not jail, and maybe go like
But
that.
more people die in the hospital than in jail.
That's right, they do.
More people are killed in the hospital.
I can't help being
clarify.
reminded of how a mafia takes over a neighborhood.
That's right.
It's so
protection,
similar.
the protection agent.
Yeah.
Hey, you pay us $100, otherwise your windows and your place burns down. You know, that's how it works, and the same type of thing. So the insurance companies are in cahoots with the medical profession. They wink and nod, even though they complain, things have gotten so expensive. Because if it's really expensive, then there are people, once again, demand that they get free, insurance, someone else pays for them, all this kind of crap for these worthless type of things that don't work most of the half of the time. So, you really want me to tell you how I feel about that? Okay, good, okay.
No, please don't hold
Yeah,
back.
I won't. Plastics linked to asthma, we were talking about that. That's a plastic, that's the biphenyl A plastic, and there's other types of crap in plastic like that. So you really don't want to put food in that, you don't want to cook in it, you don't want to microwave it. And this study showed that was linked to asthma there.
It's even best not to keep it in the refrigerator, you said.
Exactly.
It's better to use glass.
Glass, yeah, Pyrex, glass, ceramic, stuff like that. That's really hard. It doesn't go. Because plastics, even though we were joking with the movie back in the 60s, The Graduate, or the plastic, that was the word.
One word for you.
It is kind of a wonder type of compound. I mean, it's created a whole different industry. It has incredible type of factors like that. Unfortunately, it has a downside. It has really some toxic issues like that.
Well, it's also tied to the petroleum industry.
It is.
It's made from
Exactly.
petroleum.
That's
it's made from gasoline byproducts.
Yeah.
So it's one more control grid that the oil companies have.
God forbid, maybe they'll have this other guy that's able to take, this kind of brown gas, it's called, and be able to, become independent. I mean, that's kind of exciting.
Ooh, it's a dream.
Well,
hopefully it'll come true.
Or maybe John can come in and talk about it.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's kind of a factor like that. And the last couple, antioxidants are helpful for post operation for atrial fibrillation. So when you have surgery, it puts a lot of stress on you, and what happens sometimes, your heart starts to race real fast, and that can be real deadly. Like a car, it's not very efficient, and actually you can actually die from it. And so they were able to show that using antioxidants was able to actually prevent that from happening. So by having these things inside your body when you have these procedures can be both very helpful.
A good antioxidant helps keep the stents open too.
That's
doesn't
right.
it?
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
So Protandim would be.
That would be great, because they actually did a study from the Ohio study. What's called the Ohio study. Actually financed by the American Heart Association and National Institute of Health. So here are two organizations that, the last thing they ever think about is natural things. But that's what makes this so powerful, is that they actually asked to use this, what's called third party. They weren't funded by this company that makes Protandim. They weren't asked to do it. They actually looked at Dr. McCord's studies and say, hey, we want to try this, and sure enough, that's what it was able to do, is prevent this from restenosis from occurring. Last one is vitamin D and IBS. We talked a little bit about that. One of my patients, within a very short amount of time, and all my patients on IBS are able to be cured. Oh, that's right. You can't say that because it's incurable because, once again, the drug doctors and surgeons...
But we don't want you to lie, so you have to use the word cured because this is all about truth.
It's like magic. Like I said, it just seems to go away. So people that, are sick get better when they've been told. I had this elderly patient, kind of madness. She had a urinary infection. She was on 5 different types of antibiotics. I mean, if one doesn't work, why would 2 through 5 work? I mean, it doesn't. But that's just the kind of crap they do, and they keep doing it.
What happens when you go up against you're actually having a little mini war with a doctor who's saying to one person that's coming to see you,
a lot of times
take this, and this. How do you convince them to go off?
Unfortunately, is that over time, this person actually had Alzheimer's and I cured her, so she obviously thinks I know what I'm talking about because she went down to UCLA and USC, and the top neurologist there said, well, there's nothing we can do about it, which is true. You'll just get worse. Her daughter, actually had to move her up here because she couldn't take care of herself. She just happened to talk to me. I mean, I helped her with her female problems, menopausal stuff, like that. You don't have to take hormone replacement therapy that's coming back, which killed more women, over 6 million women. Nice. Increases breast cancer, cervical cancer, pulmonary emboli, strokes, heart attacks, like that. It's crap.
So people have a choice. They can either wait until their condition becomes incurable and there's nothing the drug doctors can do, or they can pursue natural therapy ahead of time before things get
Of course,
get
or
horrible.
even when they're told that you can't, just like we were talking about before, it's impossible to do it, there's still choices. But just like with most people, and that's the first question, does insurance pay for it? Does Medicare pay for it? No. And then you just close the door.
Yeah.
And I just say, hey, go on my YouTube. Here's a real person that I'm documenting that got better, just what you have. Oh, no, well, if it's not paid for by, I'll just go and buy. I mean, that's how sick this is.
It is.
It's a mental health.
It's a very strange
mental sickness.
thought pattern.
Yeah, very, very strange.
People need to develop new synapses.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or at least have some...
That's what we're doing here.
Well, or try to have some critical thinking. I mean, that would be nice to have that. So that's what we're getting.
Great. Well, thank you
Thanks
very
again,
much.
as always.
Thank you.
Everybody have a nice
Until next time.
Yep, and happy Mother's Day to everybody.
So thank you, Dr. Noah. We appreciate your input in our lives, as always. And now we will move into the pro-culture segment of our show. We have still been working our way through the Lie to Me series. We watched several this week. We're now on the present season, and so we've been watching them on the Fox website. But a few times I was by myself and otherwise occupied to some extent painting and so forth, and watched a couple of movies that I thought were interesting. One was All Good Things. This is a film about a wealthy New York real estate family, and the son is not pleased with that lifestyle, tries to get away, does for a little while, and then is drawn back in by the father. So it's not a good Mother's Day story. It's sad, has kind of a tragic ending, but it's a good thriller, and it illustrates the misery to some extent of wealthy families, and it's an illustration of how some of these, the elite live. They're not happy people, and they have difficulty loving others. We also watched LA Confidential, and I think Don has a little to say about that.
In the what era? 30s, 40s, 50s? 50s, huh?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's good. An excellent film. Another thing worth mentioning, and I can't remember if we watched these before we started doing this program or if it was after and we did talk about it, but the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who played with fire, and the girl who
Kick the
he kicked the
hornet's
hornet's nest. And those are all so great. And my son was watching them this week, and so we kind of got to see those a little bit again, and want to recommend those. There are portions that, if you have sensitive tastes, that may not appeal to you, but just from a justice and freedom fighting perspective, they are inspiring and very well written, very well done. It's in the Swedish language, so it's with subtitles, but they're great.
They are great, and we are not seeking. We're not people who seek vindication. But the expression of justice, even if desperate people find that they must claim it for themselves, is inspiring and encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
So, unless Don has something to add?
I do want to ask you a question.
Yeah?
Because it relates to technology and culture, maybe you'd like to tell us about your new toy.
Oh, Don got me an iPhone for Mother's Day, and
They're going to be tracking you now.
well, they're going to be tracking me, but it might even be a worthwhile trade-off, because I've had an iPod. He got me a fabulous iPod Touch, 32 gigabyte for Christmas, and I love that. And it kind of pushed me to want an iPhone, because I want to be able to do what I can do with my iPod wherever I go. I need Wi-Fi for the iPod, and the iPhone is. Hey, we're not selling. Maybe we should become affiliates and put a link on our website. We're not selling Apple products, but there's Intuitive. That's what I use to produce our video, to do the editing, and I've been a big fan of Apple for many, many years, since about 1991, and so thank you for the fabulous Mother's Day gift.
We have enslaved you now.
You can send me a text. I'll get my emails anywhere I am. So have a happy Mother's Day and a good week.
Happy Mother's Day.